Alright, here's the second video for you guys. This is your vote, your voice, and this is now electing the president. Okay? First off, the page that you have there, it asks you what represents what. The Democratic Party, again, the liberals, they're represented by a donkey. Now, the man who came up with this, his name is Frank Bellamy, and he did these. Outside of that, there's really no meaning behind it outside of just having something fun to do with. You'll see in these political cartoons, or you'll see them all over the things. But the Democrats are the donkeys. I'll start with them first because you keep the D's together, you should be okay. The other big party is the Republican Party, and they're represented by an elephant. Again, no real reason for the elephant. And as well, the Republican parties, sometimes on this elephant you'll see the three letters GOP, which stand for Grand Old Party. And that goes way back when, and really doesn't make a lot of sense because they're not the first party. But basically, guys, when you have these two things together, Democrats are represented by a donkey, Republicans are represented by an elephant. Okay? It's kind of their spokesperson, if you will. Now, our current president, our 44th president, is President Barack Obama. He was elected in 2008. He was re-elected in 2012. Because we have had a president who served 4 terms, named Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in the 70s we passed something that limited our president to 2 terms. It's the 22nd Amendment. And so for that reason, since President Obama has served just 2 terms, he can no longer run. He has to pass the torch to somebody else. Okay. His running mate, who's been with him there in both presidencies, is named Joe Biden. So he is our current vice president, and so he as well will be leading the White House. Now, he could have had the option himself to run as president, but guys, very seldomly do we have a vice president be elected as a president. The last one, I believe, would be George H.W. Bush, which is Howard Walker. It was the dad. He was vice president under Ronald Reagan. When Reagan's term was up, they elected Bush Sr. one time, and then we go into Clinton, which were the 90s, okay? Now, in the 2016 election, we are now down to 2 candidates. The Democrats, the donkeys, the liberals, whatever you want to call them, they are represented by Hillary Clinton. She could make a very serious name for herself because she would become the first female president. The other way of making a name for herself is her husband, Bill Clinton, was our 42nd. Yep, 42nd president. So that's something unique there, and so we call the wife of the president the first lady. I don't know what we call the male. It should be like the first dude, or whatever it might be. I don't know. I guess we'll find out if she wins, correct? Now, the Republicans have nominated a business tycoon. His name is Donald Trump, and he is their candidate. So the Republicans, the elephants, the conservatives, what do you call them, they will go with Donald Trump as their choice. So when you are electing president, generally they say it comes down to 2 big parties, and we've never had a third party win. You can vote for a third party. You can actually write in some states a name. But some people feel that this is unnecessary because if you don't vote for one of the 2, they feel like their vote is wasted. I'm going to show you a scenario in which that's not necessarily the case. Okay? So we have these 2 people running. These are the big 2, as they call them. These are the people who debated. And a lot of people in November when they go to vote, will make their choice between one of these 2 people. Okay? That brings me to the third party option. As I said, if you actually go to thirdparty.org, I think it is, they'll have a list of all the people running. The biggest of the third parties, we have the Constitutional Party, we have the Libertarian Party, and we have the Green Party. But there's a lot of them, okay? There's a Communist Party of America, there's a Socialist Party of America. But the Libertarian Party is the one that's making the most noise right now. The guy running, his name's Gary Johnson. It's potentially he could win his home state of New Mexico, and this would cause a problem for the Electoral College because they would have to vote for him, winning his state popular vote, and could potentially prevent the president from being decided. It would actually go to House of Congress, which is really cool. Again, presidential qualifications, be at least 35 years old, natural-born citizen here, lived in the U.S. for 14 years. Um, so that all comes into play, and if you are those three things, you can become a president. Now, the presidential duties, I kind of made mention of this before. First off, he is chief of state. This basically tells you he is the ceremonial head of the government, and he's the symbol of the people of the United States. Okay. Next, he is the chief executive. There are three branches in the government. Presidential is called the executive, which has him, the vice president, all these secretaries that help him, aides, and all kinds of people in the White House. But he's the chief one, okay? The other two branches are legislative, that's Congress, and judicial, which are is the Supreme Court, the judges. So he's chief executive, okay? And as such, he has kind of the big decision when it comes to domestic at home and foreign abroad or in a different country powers. Now, he's also the chief administrator or director of the U.S. government. And so it tells you right here he employs around 3 million civilians, and he spends over $2 trillion a year. You didn't even know that was a number, did you? Trillion. Yeah, we're not making it up. Like, that's a lot of money. Think about what $2 trillion could get you. You know, that's a scary thought, asking a fifth grader what they buy with $2 trillion, because as you get older, the priorities would be bigger. Again, that's why we have to be 35 years old to be president, correct? Lastly, he is chief diplomat. Now, a diplomat deals with foreign countries. So anytime there's a problem that he needs to go solve or he wants to do some type of treaty, he is the one 9 times out of 10 who's going to go. If he doesn't, he sends one of his secretaries. But for the most part, he is that. So that's what the president does all day. Thanks, that's a lot, isn't it? Now, when we vote in November, our popular vote leads to what is called the Electoral College. Now, this is a map of how many electoral votes each state has. You in Mississippi have 6 electoral votes. So in the really big scheme of things, guys, Mississippi has to partner up with the South. The big states you want us to win, if you see California has a ton, a lot of the northeastern states, New York and Pennsylvania, I mean, there's close to 60 over there. Florida has a ton. So these are the states where you really hear the candidates are because they are the most electoral votes. So you vote, it tells the Electoral College who they want to vote, and then that becomes the president. How many electoral votes do you need to win? You need 270. And if you ever get really curious or you need a project to go look at, there's a great website called 272win.com, and it has every single presidential election with the Electoral College and how many votes they got and how close it was and what the issues were. It's really great. There's also one called Living Room Candidate, which shows you every single televised ad. And there's some that aired like once, and there's some that were just had catchy jingles, and there's some where they just completely slandered the other opponent. So the internet has given us this wealth of opportunities to look into the past and see, okay, somebody like this or somebody like the one we have now could potentially get into it. Now, what does that mean for the Electoral College? This is how it works. Yikes, right? So what you have here is, first off, you have the qualifications. Then they go through something called caucuses. Caucus is almost like a mini debate where they're trying to decide these things. They come down, they go through the convention, they select them. They come down to the voting. The popular vote leads to the electoral vote, which then decides the president once you have 270. It kind of looks like a game board, doesn't it? It kind of looks like, you know, Chutes and Ladders, or I don't know, what's another one? Candyland, something like that. Okay? So that's how it works. Question mark, question mark, question mark. And a lot of people have difficulty understanding that. But again, to make it very short for you, once the presidential candidate has been nominated by his or her convention, the popular vote votes for them. That tells the Electoral College who they want to vote. They do not have to vote with the popular vote. They can vote for whomever they want. And that will ultimately lead to the president being elected. Now, has there ever been a time when the popular vote was different than the electoral? Absolutely. The biggest one, and there's been many, maybe about 5, 6 times, but the biggest one was in 2000. Al Gore was selected by the popular vote. George W. Bush, the son of George Howard Walker Bush, was actually elected by the Electoral College. And that led to a big debate, and they went, and the Supreme Court had to decide, and So we have had that occurrence. It doesn't happen very often, though. Okay. Now, who's in the Electoral College? Guys, this is a really big discussion. So what I've done for you here, there's a website called archives.gov, Federal Register, Electoral College, FAQ, which stands for Frequently Asked Questions. This covers how do you get into the Electoral College, what do they do, why are they there, etc. So if you're ever really, really curious, or if you have time after this video, pull this up and look at some of these questions that if I started to talk about it, we'd be here for a couple hours. You don't have that time. Ain't nobody got time for that. But you do on your own time, and you can go look at these, okay? It's really good. Now, lastly, I just put this in here. What's your civic duty? Your civic duty is to vote. Now, this may be a little bit harsh. I'm sorry if it is. But in the mindset, guys, the only way to necessitate change is not protest. It is not all these different things. That simply brings the issue about. The way to necessitate change is you vote for people that have the stance on the issues that you like. You put them in a position of power, and they do the things that they were put to do. So in short, we either vote or we shut up. If you do not vote, you do not have the right to complain. And many, many, many Americans waste this vote. And so to put it shortly for you, and this is maybe my plug on civic duty, if you've ever looked at the American flag has three distinct colors. The blue represents the azure skies of which we live in, just telling you that this is a great country. Azure is a shade of blue, by the way. There are 50 stars representing the 50 states in the United States, and the star is kind of the symbol of freedom. Then you have 13 stripes, red and white, okay? The 13 number is representative of the 13 colonies. The whites go back to a saying of don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes, meaning determination. And here's the whole reason I wanted to bring up the flag. The red is the blood of our forefathers and our relatives and our grandfathers and everybody who served in the military. And so I always tell my kids in high school, because they're getting much, much closer to voting, if you choose not to vote, that red on that flag, that person that sacrificed, that put that life on the line for you, that was in vain. Don't let their lives be in vain. When you're able to vote, vote. Encourage your parents to vote. Encourage anybody you hear the words, I'm not going to vote. Encourage them to vote. Encourage them to make their choice. Because if they don't, they have these two options here. You can vote up or you can shut up. Don't tell them that, of course, because that would be a little bit crass. But basically tell them they need to exercise their vote. In fact, it goes back to the name on your page where I got all this stuff off, and that is it's your vote. It's your voice. And the only way to make your voice heard is to vote. I hope you enjoyed these. I hope this wasn't too fast or too anything like that. If it is, you can play it again. Definitely, you probably want to delve into that third-party candidates thing. It's an interesting thing. Definitely, you probably want to look at the frequently asked questions about the Electoral College. But there you go.